Well, hello. Today we have Amanda Cassar, who's been, she's an advisor. She's an aged care specialist as well, from my understanding. Fellow colleague, we've both been in the AFA together. But I reached out to Amanda because she actually has just recently launched a course on financial abuse. And I was incredibly interested. Most of us female advisors often deal with a lot of divorced women. I particularly, that's sort of my niche. So this topic was something that I was very interested in as soon as I heard about it. First heard from friend Michelle Hoskins, who has set up their course. But we'll go into that in a minute. I just want you, Amanda, just to share with me exactly what is financial abuse.
All right. It's funny. Some people have either completely heard about it or they're going, what on earth is that? So pretty much it's a form of abuse when an intimate partner has control over the other partner's access to financial resources, which can also diminish their capacity to support themselves, or it forces them to depend on the perpetrator of the abuse financially. So it can be called economic or financial abuse. And it also includes illegal or unauthorized use of somebody's property or valuables, or changing a person's will. It's quite a wide area that it covers. It also includes elder abuse, and it's mostly caught under domestic violence law in most states and in different countries. So economic abuse is slightly different because it includes the control of your present or future earning potential, as well as the control of your assets. So yeah, it's a rather nasty and insidious crime.
And do people, when you're like, often people are in a relationship don't actually recognise immediately that they are being abused. Have you seen cases where, and we'll probably go into you talking more about some cases you've researched. Have you seen cases where, the abused have been in the situation for some time before they actually become aware of the situation and the depth of the abuse?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, nobody falls in love with an abuser. That's, our love goggles are on. It's not someone going, right, hand me your money at the first time you fall in love with someone. So it's very often a very gradual process, and it can start with, little things. You might notice things go missing, or they'll say something or request something, and there's that little niggle. You go, oh, that was a bit weird, or I'm not real comfortable with that. But we then justify it. We go, oh, maybe it's a bad mood, or I don't mind, they can help out or have access to those things. So it is this process of gradualism. And one lady I interviewed, because I said, obviously, you're not, falling in love with this guy who, ended up, being such a severe abuser. And she likened it to the frog in the pot. It was, if you pop in a frog in the cool water and you slowly turn the heat up, they don't jump out. Where if all of a sudden the heat's there, the frog goes, right, I'm out of here. So that's how she likened it to me.
Wow.
That this gradual boiling of her, that finally, and then you're so far down the track, you're like, how on earth did I get here? Before you, put your head up and go, this just doesn't seem right.
Can you, obviously for privacy reasons, I understand you've got to be careful, but can you give us an example of a case that you've studied or come across?
Yeah, look, Marie Lalensack is a financial professional in the industry who's very kindly shared her story with me. So, a very well-educated woman, been in financial services all her life, fell in love with a wonderful man and was going sailing around the world with him. And how it started for her was, he said, look, I've got a dream. Would you help me invest in my dream? So he sold her the dream. And it started out with $30,000 to help restore a beautiful boat that he had. And over time, Marie ended up $1.2 million in the hole, and he tried to murder her on that boat. So it can escalate from very, very small things to some serious, life-threatening issues.
Wow. That's extreme. Oh, goodness me.
Yes, it was. It's very extreme.
Now, look, something I am fascinated with is behaviours, and part of my work is part of the financial planning stuff is also the money coaching, where we look at people's pasts. Have you looked at that? Where you've got the abuser. Have they learnt this from their parents, or have they? Is this something that is a pattern in people's lives? Are there things that people could look out for?
Look, I'm not a trained psychologist, so it's hard to pass judgment on that. But there does seem to be an element of that controlling behaviour. Narcissism often features, and it can also manifest in other forms of abuse as well, with control and the domestic violence. So, look, financial abuse can be a completely standalone event, or it can be part of a bigger pattern, and does form. In the States, they've done research that 99% of all domestic violence cases include financial abuse. So
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So look, whether there's a type, not really, because it can also be driven by need and circumstance. So it could be somebody ends up with a gambling problem or an addiction problem and is looking for money, and they have blame issues where they don't take responsibility for their own behaviour and it's always somebody else's fault. There's also the control factor where the emotional abuse then takes place, where you're no good with money, you'll never be any good with money. So the other person is quite beaten down and then ends up, doubting their own abilities. So it's very, very complex. And look, there's no cookie cutter. Yep, this bloke's the pin up for it and he's going to do it. And even when it comes to elder abuse, there's now a phrase they've coined called inheritance impatience, where you go, well, it's going to be mine anyway, I'll just help myself now. So, it can be a very ordinary mum, dad, daughter. Oh, the school fees are due. Oh, look, mum's got that bit extra. I've got power of attorney. I'll just sneak that. So, it's
I'm sort of
quite insidious.
Okay. Wow. Because that's the next question I was going to go is dealing with the elderly. We have seen you see in the media, someone's been swindled out of their estate. All of a sudden they're an elderly person. All of a sudden they don't have anything because someone's been their carer or whatever. That's sort of a very obvious example. But what kind of things would someone who is, maybe the head of the family, has the household and has children, adult children, which they be looking out for?
Usually there's a single perpetrator of abuse in a family, and unfortunately it's often for the elderly, a child, can be a spouse or partner, or it could be a carer. So there's actually, I think it's about 5 different types of common abuse that occur in the elderly. So you've got the physical, psychological, financial, sexual, and neglect is even included. But around 40% of all those crimes are financial abuse. So it is one of the biggest that it does impact the elderly. And we have a tendency, I think, as a society to infantilize the elderly or treat them like an infant, where we're like, oh, mum's losing her mind, she just doesn't remember anymore. So we don't take their worries as seriously as we might have in the past. So if mum's going, I can't find my checkbook, dear, or I don't know where that term deposit is, we might just go, oh, mum, you've probably just misplaced it. So we have a tendency to go, maybe it's not as serious as mum thinks. So that's one of the biggest signs that we don't take their worries and concerns as seriously as we possibly should. And look, mum may be losing her marbles, but she also may have moments of absolute lucidity where she's going, no, something is wrong, something's missing. And look, it's if there's other siblings involved and one of them's managing everything, it can be, that the family needs to do an intervention and go, look, what you're doing is not right. And there have been cases where, the families are left with nothing because of one sibling who's just taken over and done the dirty on mum and dad, and everybody else misses out.
Wow. So I guess this whole segment, really, we see the negative on money and how it can turn people to do terrible things to others out of greed. which is quite sad. I mean, I sort of look at money and say it's a positive thing if we're using it in a positive way, because it has sometimes such a negative feelings or energy about it. In this case, we are focused on that. But I guess the positive on this is finding out what we can do as community, as partners, as friends, as siblings, as daughters, as sons, to actually recognise when our loved one is in a situation where they're being financially abused. Can you give us some examples? We'll go back to being in a relationship. Say, you've got a husband and wife situation. Can you give us an example of what warning signs we should be looking out for?
Look, it can be something as severe as an extreme monitoring of purchases, where hubby says, look, I want you to bring home every receipt of every single thing you buy, and you're only allowed an allowance of this much, or you're not allowed your own bank accounts, or I'm not going to let you do this certain kind of work. So it's that kind of control factor that might be there. When we see that in others, we can just, call out a friend or a girlfriend, and say, look, I'm really uncomfortable when Bill doesn't let you come shopping with me, or go out for a coffee, or spend $10 on yourself. That I don't understand, are you okay with that? So just opening the conversation in a really calm way. We're talking about our feelings, like, I'm uncomfortable when this happens. It's not that bloody Bill, he gives me the dirts when he treats you that way, which we can often go on the attack because we're so indignant about what's happening. But obviously then we're starting the situation in this really tense way. So it's nice to be able to open it up. And depending on the person and how far along the abuse is, they may be really happy that they've got a listening ear, that someone goes, oh, wow, I thought I was a bit uncomfortable about it, but I didn't realise, maybe it's not right. Or look, I'm so far in the hole, I don't know what to do. I don't know how I got here. How do I get out of it? So there's so many stages of the abuse, before we see it. It may be really difficult to then have that conversation with someone.
Yeah. And you've put out an accredited course, and, I'm going to be doing that as an advisor. So if someone is recognised, they've had that conversation with a girlfriend or a mate or whatever, and they've realised, actually, you know what, I am in the hole. Where do I go? Where do they go? What resources are there out for people when they're in this situation?
Yeah, look, it's a global course, so trying to pull together all those bits and pieces globally is difficult. So in Australia specifically, there's a fabulous group based in Victoria called Wire, and they are all about helping especially women through this situation. And again, depending on the circumstance. So some women may come out of a relationship with absolutely nothing, need to start over, think they're dreadful with money because that's what they've been told, and may need financial counselling to help, basic budgeting, get back on track. Others may, end up in a divorce with a great settlement and go, I'm so lost. I don't know what to do with this. I've always been told I can't invest. I'm no good. Where do I go? And advisors have a really great opportunity to assist in that space. If you don't know where to start, there are hotlines. There's an elder abuse hotline that's national for Australia. For financial abuse, you may want to ring a local shelter or even a charity like Share the Dignity that helps collect things for women, for women. There's an awful version of financial abuse now that's coming to light called period poverty, where a partner won't allow access to sanitary items for the women so that they have to stay at home and have no pads or tampons. And they're even finding that these women are raiding laundromats to steal socks to use in lieu of pads because of the situation that they're in. So it can be that extreme that, people are having to resort to theft to look after themselves physically.
Wow. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm just in shock with that one. I've never even thought that would be
I still get goosebumps every
level of control.
Yeah. But there's also, advisors have a really cool space when they're first meeting with a client to set the scene and go, look, this is the sort of advisor I am. I really encourage healthy relationships financially with my clients. These are the expectations I have. And this is what a beautiful, healthy relationship looks like. I expect to meet both of you at every meeting and every review. You know, I want you to have these beautiful joint goals that we're working together. So instead of focusing on, look, I've seen these dreadful cases where, you know, one suppresses the other, it's, this is what I expect from our relationship. You know, I've been married 26 years now, and when I first came across these cases of abuse, like you, it just was so gobsmacked that that's how it worked, but didn't know that I could then contrast that between, okay, this is what it looks like in a normal, healthy relationship versus what you're experiencing isn't that. So that's something to aspire to, rather than, yeah, that's just all wrong and really mucked up and you need to get out of there. So
I'm sure, I mean, us advisors, we do come across it a lot. I as I said, I deal with a lot of women going through divorce. In one particular case, she came to me late last year, and that perfect example you put together earlier is she has had a husband who has put her down and says, you can't, you know, you're hopeless, you're not good at money, you spend too much, this, that, and the other. And, you know, she had absolutely no confidence. And going through a settlement, you know, she just didn't have any fight in her. It was heartbreaking to see. And my job was more to encourage her, build her up and go, you're great at this. You do know what you're doing. You're fine. You know, you aren't overspending. You actually
have been in that situation are the greatest budgeters. They know how to make that $100 grocery bill go so fast. So
correct.
They're perfect at it. So after being told they're lousy, they're actually rock stars at budgeting. So it's a great
100%. And they come to me, she actually came to me very nervous. I remember our first meeting, she was really nervous, and my heart broke for her. I could see straight away that she was broken, that this relationship had, but in that situation also, he's living in $1 million house and living on 6-figure income, and she's like a designer on, you know, 50,000, and moved out of that house with a child into a tiny little unit, living on almost nothing. And I just sort of made it clear. I said, you're obviously that unhappy in that relationship to be happy, you know, I mean, to be in this situation where you've got nothing, and absolutely okay with that. That's a starting point to start seeing how negative that environment was for you, you know.
Toxic, yeah.
So we sort of had to work through that, and for her to open her eyes and realize that she's got this freedom and she's in control, and she had the courage. That's the biggest thing, to leave. Absolutely. To move forward. And that's sort of, I think, our job as advisors, more than, you know, just our number, because a lot of people think, oh, you just do the numbers and you sort of organise our super and you organise the aged care and this, that and the other. But there's so much on the emotional side that we work with.
Yeah, we're counsellors as well.
We're counsellors, that's absolutely right. So that's why I want to do this course, because I think, you know, and I think I would obviously encourage everybody in our profession to be doing a course like this, and maybe, you know, suggest accountants and legal professionals to be doing it.
Financial professionals, yeah. And look, even support staff in advisors' offices, because at the first, we may only just have a gut feel. We may have no evidence that there's something going on, but you've just got that something's not right. And sometimes sharing with the team going, look, I might be completely off track here, but this is what I'm thinking. So, you know, if one day, you know, the son rings up and wants to clear out mum's pension account and the staff are aware that you're not real sure about this relationship, having them then be able to buy a bit of time and come back to you is really vital. Whereas, you know, in the past, the staff member may just have gone, sure, I'll send out the withdrawal form, no problem, I'm being really efficient by doing that, and not knowing that you even suspect that something could be wrong. So sharing it with our teams is also really, really important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I mean, I always do, when I'm doing the cash flow stuff, cash flow is part of the foundation of the work that I do. So money tells you a story when you're looking at transactions. I do in 90 days, and I like to have a look at, you know, where money's coming in and out. So that's another thing, looking at, well, who's actually doing these transactions and who's in control of that. Is it a joint account? Is it just in one individual's name? That also tells you a bit of a story. I would find that, you know, is another thing that I guess if you've got staff that are doing that work is also probably a good thing to be looking out for.
Absolutely. And I think encouraging right from the start that although a joining together of the goals, there's also a maintaining of independence. And especially when two people are working, might be, look, you have your wage go into your account, hubby or wife have their wage going to their account, but you come together for the joint goals. So you might have an account that is for joint, and whether you choose that you have, you pay all the bills 50-50, or he looks after the mortgage and you look after the groceries and the utilities, whatever your family decides that, okay, you've got all that there, you both contribute to that. If there's anything left over, does it go on a family holiday? Does it reduce debt? Whatever the advisor thinks is right. But then no client will ever be in a situation where it's like, I have nothing. I am so stuck. I cannot escape. I've got nowhere to go. One of the ladies I interviewed, she was actually the original one who piqued my interest in this. She came into her relationship as this award-winning investigative journalist with a trust account and a home and money in the bank, and left absolutely emotionally broken. She had a stroke, she got epilepsy, she had seizures, and she was skimming $20 off the groceries to buy a card to store at a girlfriend's house so that she could afford food for her and her daughter for a couple of months by the time she could leave, and then couch surf at friends' houses until she could get established. So those sort of stories just tell me, never surrender your independence completely. Banks are now also offering secret bank accounts that they will never send out a letter or a statement. You don't have to have it on any apps. The only way to access that money is to walk into the branch to access your account, so that they know, people who are in distress need that complete anonymity and the ability to hide if they have to funds. So more and more banks are becoming aware of the situation. And I mean, even bank tellers, they should be frontline in this as well and trained, so that, their gut's telling them something's not right, especially when a power of attorney, walks up and, demands to clear out an account. How can, bank staff even assist with this? So there's so many people involved and that should be able to assist. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know what got you on this path.
Well, it was actually Tanya's story. So a couple of years ago, I wanted to write a book, and I wasn't sure if I was, going to go for the lusty bodice busting, raunchy novella, or, obviously a financial tome, which eventually won out. And I was sort of trying to think of ideas that hadn't been done before. Everyone's written on how super works or how to do a budget. And I wondered more and more about how we're raised and how that impacts us going forward. So, my sister and I were raised in the same house. My father's a very frugal man. He would sit down and balance the books every month, and if he couldn't find that 5 cents, he'd get very irritated. Everything went into the family, and he had, a lot of control. And, I've ended up in financial services, and my sister, look, she'd give away the last 5 cents she had if she needed to. So you come out of these situations forming your own ideas. And everyone I interviewed, I said, what did your parents teach you about money? And the answer was always nothing. But I said, okay, so the unspoken lessons, what did you learn? And it could have been, money didn't grow on trees, or the case of Tanya, who became the abused wife. Her parents taught her that only bad people get ahead. So every time they drove past a nice house, they're like, I wonder what they did to get that. So there's always this connotation of money meant badness, or you had to be a bad person to succeed. And so she had to overcome these ideas in her head that everyone who had a buck was an ass. So, which, obviously didn't help. And it was a girlfriend of hers who was covering the murder of Alison Baden Clay at the time, who was recognising all the behaviours that the husband Jared was displaying in Tanya's husband, and was writing to her going, this is you. This is going to be you if you don't get out. So having that brave person in your life to call it and say, I'm really, really uncomfortable with what's going on for you. And it wasn't until he gave her an ultimatum and said, look, stop fiddling around with the media, get a job working in a supermarket. I'm sick of this. And that was when her daughter turned up and said, Mummy, that's not who you are. And then she just had that, gut drop moment when she went, I'm being a really bad example for my daughter. I have to get out of this and show her what life's all about. And she's, look, amazing success story. She's reinvented. She's married a gorgeous bloke and settled in California, running amazing, online courses for people who want to get into the media. So she's, used all that knowledge she ever had to become a success story and walk away from it. So look, it is possible. I think so many people walk away so broken. You just don't think there's any light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, there's people out there who do love you, believe in you, support you, and can help you. And it is that mindset. How do we change that mindset from, I can't do this, to actually I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So from there you basically started.
Yeah, it just piqued my interest so much when I wrote her story in the book, and the experiences that she'd had, and, how she turned her life around. And, other people from very middle class backgrounds who become, multi-millionaires, and yet their sibling is, a stay-at-home child in his 30s, and, someone else is running a multi-million-dollar business. So it was all about these lessons, and her story just was the standout to me about this financial abuse. And I just went, I need to know more about this. Like I said before, married forever, no issues about this, and going, how many people actually do suffer from this? And I'd also interviewed Michelle Hoskin for the book, who runs Standards International, who you mentioned earlier. And I said, look, I think you should really read Tanya's story when you get the book. It's really fascinating. And she's like, Amanda, there's more to it. I said, yeah, I think I need to do like a little short course or something about this, and got involved with XY to put something together. And Michelle's going, no, this is bigger than that. She goes, I think there's a global need for this. And I'm like, well,
absolutely.
I've never written a course. I wouldn't know how to get it accredited.
Yeah.
All the excuses.
Yeah. She won't handle an excuse though, not Michelle. Goodness me. You're stuck there.
Book will be about financial abuse. I mean, that'll be a bestseller for sure. She's like, no. She goes, man, I can accredit it. This is, so it became this collaboration, that we just both felt so passionately working in financial services that we were so ill-equipped to do anything about this. And there's emerging now more end user, for the victims of abuse to do courses and to learn about. So there's getting a bit of momentum in that space, but there's certainly still nothing for financial professionals. Some of the banks are releasing papers on, they're finding white papers on what to do. But I just thought this is a space we all need so much more training in. And the hardest part was I can't give you the silver bullet. There's no cookie cutter approach going, right, this is the thing you follow in every single situation and it'll all work out magic in the end. Because every single case is so different. And the responses can vary from do absolutely nothing to call. So, we can be dealing with fraud, abusive power of attorney, to, I just think I need to file note this for a bit and follow it up. Or do I need to have an offline conversation with the partner who never gets to make it to the meeting, or the partner talks over the top of the other one the whole time. They never get to answer my questions. Do I need to speak to them later going, look, I felt I didn't get your side of the story today. Bob was so enthusiastic. Mary, I just wanted to, make sure that they were your views as well, if Mary is allowed to make it to the meeting. So, just getting some more techniques in our kit bag about how we actually approach this when we see it, instead of going, I actually don't want to know, I might sack them as clients, I don't want to deal with this, I might be putting my neck on the line. We're advisors who are now being encouraged by every global organisation to get our ethics up to speed. We have a responsibility to our clients to be able to assist them. And look, if you're not in the space to do that, or you're really inexperienced, I've found, financial advice is such a sharing community. There's going to be experienced advisors. There's people like yourself who do specialise in divorced women. There's Dominique Burgle-Grant from Leapfrog. There's Trisha Peters in Melbourne. There's plenty of people who this is their specialty. I know Deb Kent has seen cases, and she was kind enough to share some stories for the course. So, reach out to me, find an advisor who, is prepared to share their story. Deb shared one case where she had to weigh up ethics law versus privacy law.
Wow.
Did she tell the client what was going on when they'd given a power of attorney and breached privacy law, or ethically and morally did she have enough evidence to go to that client and say, I'm really uncomfortable with what your attorney is doing and I want to make you aware of it. So, you know, sometimes the licensee can't help with that. They might be, look, the letter of the law is privacy, but now we've also got this ethical overlay.
We do.
So,
and Deb's involved in that, which is,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know, those sort of decisions, sometimes we can't make them on our own. You know, we need to bounce these ideas off. And, you know, we've got beautiful communities like the AFA or XY Advisor or the FPA, whatever community you're in.
There's a lot of communities out there.
And NDRT, I love to death. So,
yeah,
you know, there's people who do want to help and, you know, can guide you. And, you know, they may have differing even opinions, but take a few, get a bit of feedback and go, look, what feels right for me? How am I going to approach this? And look, sometimes it may be that you do have to walk away and you can't, but other times, you know, you might have to just, put your neck on the chopping block and go, look, I actually can't ethically, morally walk away from this without saying, I'm really uncomfortable about your situation. I'm here if you need me. Whether you want to do something or not is completely up to you. But, you know, I'm losing sleep over it at night and, you know, you must be as well. So, you know, there's just so many ways of dealing with it. Get some experience, you know, to help back you up.
Which is where my next question was going is, how do people find out about this course, register for the course, get info from this? So can you send, I'll put a link on anyway with
absolutely.
putting this out.
Standardinternational.co.uk is the website that Michelle's got the course on. So if you go to certifications, in the drop-down box, the financial abuse specialist, it's a trademarked accreditation. So there's probably 4 or 5 hours worth of video in it to watch. So I've interviewed 2 victims of abuse that I've mentioned today, Marie and Tanya. I've interviewed 3 separate financial advisors, including one in the US, about cases they've had of abuse and how they dealt with them. I interviewed a family law accredited lawyer who deals, you know, exclusively in the divorce space and cases she's come across and how, you know, she helps them through that. So there's a fair bit of video work. At the end, there's a case study that you need to be able to identify the red flags in the case. You have to submit the answers to that, do 2 quizzes, and even upload a video of yourself about why you're passionate about it and want to be an abuse specialist, what it means to you and in your practice. So the whole idea of the course is to come away with a policy or procedure for your own business that, you know, I hope you never see it in your lifetime in your practice. But if you do, you're on the front foot. You already know about it. You've got it, something you can go to. I'm begging everyone, go back to your licensee and go, look, if they don't have a policy or procedure on this, get them to do one. You know, they should be your first port of call. You know, they're the ones who hold your PI. Make sure that they're all over it. Many of them now have an elder abuse or a vulnerable client policy, but it may not cover cases of financial abuse. So we need to be begging them also to be able to assist us and support us through these cases as well. But, you know, the fact, you know, forewarned is forearmed and, you know, being prepared, be a Boy Scout.
Yep, being prepared. Oh, I just find this absolutely amazing. So once we've got the accreditation, it's then about looking at building that into our practice. And you suggest that we get, you know, that there'll be other professionals such as accountants. You know, you say banks are doing that. So you're going to be pushing this or recommending banks get their teams on board with this course as well.
Yeah, we'd absolutely love that. And Michelle also wants it that the accreditation is renewed very regularly because things are going to change all the time in this space. So that, you know, every couple of years come back, redo your accreditation, learn what's happening in the industry. I mean, period poverty is a fairly new term that I mentioned earlier. There's new phenomenons like granny dumping, where the elderly are just being dropped off and left. An American family dropped an elderly relative with dementia off in the UK and abandoned him. It was one of the first cases in the UK where they actually prosecuted a granny dumping case. So, you know, it's morphing and changing all the time, what we need to keep up with. So there will be new material coming out every couple of years to stay on top of it.
I'd expect this year and going forward with the effects of COVID-19 that we'll see a lot more of this coming through the woodwork.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I mean, our government just announced that we're now in a recession, which we were expecting because it's been 2 quarters
Negative growth.
of negative growth, exactly. So going forward with such problems with, jobs, certain states still in lockdown, have you come across more cases? Are you starting to see people reaching out to you or other professionals reaching out to you?
It's a very mixed bag. In some cases, the domestic violence calls have really increased. In others, they've said they've actually gone down because the people are less safe to reach out because the partner is always home.
Of course.
Online gambling has also increased dramatically. I know of one case where a man just said to his wife, look, take my phone. He did $1,800 in the first 3 weeks he was in lockdown, just out of sheer boredom. So these are the sort of things that are going to be coming out. I'm also involved with a charity group called the Hunger Project in India, and they were saying, millions of people in the city who had jobs had to go back to their villages and have no work. So for them, the domestic violence massively increased. There's frustration. There's no way to earn an income until the country opens back up. So it's sometimes more hidden, and other times it's just an explosive reaction to the frustration, the stress. We're seeing crazy behaviour all over the world. People carrying on about their rights and all the rest of it when, most of us are going, can we just be kind? Whether you believe a mask is going to save you or not, can you just wear one?
It's not a big ask, is it?
To other people, we're not asking you to, drown your sorrows or give up your firstborn child. It's really not a big thing.
It's just a bit of material.
You're happy to wear your seatbelt, pop on a mask, so yeah. It's very difficult, when people are so stressed. There's a lot of mental illness coming out from the financial pressures. So I think advisors are going to be seeing a lot more. And advisors aren't stressed enough with, regulatory change that they're battling at the moment, but seeing all their clients' circumstances. So we do have a perfect storm brewing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just as you're saying that, my mind has been to a million places of things that I'm recognising now. Like just my boys' school, they're having a lot more fights. And I had a meeting with the principal because I was concerned. My son's a national Muay Thai champion. So he just feels the need to be breaking up these fights all the time. And he texts me and goes, I broke up another fight. I'm like, oh, God, what's going on at this
little
school?
hero.
And I know, little hero. I said, don't be doing that. Like, don't get involved. I know how to combat. I'm fine. I'm just stopping it. And I'm like, that's really sweet. And the principals, the teachers actually appreciate it. And he's quick, so he's not getting hit or anything. But the problem, I'm concerned that there's this fight. So I brought it up and she said, COVID, the stress is at home. It's coming through the kids. And then I was just thinking, the same thing. Kids actually would be recognising stuff going on. Like you said with the story of the daughter saying, Mum, this isn't you. Children, that's my mum says, mouths, from the mouths of babes. They're like little mirrors. They reflect a lot, and they need to be heard as well. So I guess there's another layer there for this course to go to, psychologists, child counsellors, school counsellors, and teachers as well. Because if they are picking stuff up, I mean, they're already trained in picking up whether there's potential abuse going on at home, just out of protecting the children. But this is another layer of abuse, which I believe and feel hasn't been spoken about. You shedding the light is amazing. And I think the more we talk about it, the more normal and, it's not a normal thing, but the more it's okay to feel safe to talk about it. Because there's always shame already around money.
Yeah, Me Too has helped with that. All of a sudden it's there's these exposés and stories of these super powerful people who've been in positions for so long. And it's not like we didn't know about the casting couch in Hollywood. I mean, that's been around forever, but these women are now brave enough to come out and go, it's not right anymore. It's not acceptable anymore. And, this is just another form of abuse. That's the worst sentence I've ever said in my life. But it's time to shine the light on these things and make it more acceptable to talk about it. A woman is murdered in Australia every single week from an intimate partner. That's not okay.
No,
most of these women are also suffering, from all other types of abuse as well. So the more it's out there, and I think also there's more of a need now, that it's not just let's get the victim out of that situation. It's like, how can we help the perpetrator? You know, they obviously need counselling or help to be able to understand what they're doing isn't a normal behaviour. Do they need psychological assistance? You know, sometimes it's absolutely necessary that mum and the kids have to get out of a dangerous situation, but sometimes that makes dad angrier and puts their lives in more at risk. So how do we help dad calm down, understand there's other ways of expressing anger or control, whatever those needs are? So, you know, and not just disciplining perpetrators, but showing men how to, you know, have respectful relationships, and women as well. There's women who absolutely, you know, abuse their husband. In the story, I interview that family lawyer. She talks about a mixed race marriage where the wife would siphon off all the money from the Aussie fly in, fly out worker and actually beat him if she thought he wasn't, you know, making enough money. So it does go both ways.
I have come across where a woman has actually completely taken advantage and then threatened legal action when they split up. So he's given away more money, and it's just like, but you know what? A lot of it was all bullshit, excuse my language, because
that's when you need a really good family lawyer. Absolutely.
You know, you look back, I could sit back and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, when you're in the situation, you don't realise, as you said, it's like the boiling frog. You don't realise you're in that until, you know, almost it's too hot. You're boiling. You're in the thick of it. I mean, we could probably talk about this topic for so long. I was actually so excited about meeting with you, and I was talking to an accountant last week, and he was like, oh, tell me what is this financial abuse? And then he asked me, so I'm in control of our finances. Does that mean I'm abusing my wife? And I thought that's so sweet that you're even thinking that. So the fact that you've actually asked and wanted to know what is too controlling. And I said, let's put it down to the conversation of you, say, a big ticket purchase. Are you going to just flat out say no, or let's do some research together and let's work out, can this work together? I mean, that's sort of where you work out. There's a line in the sand of saying absolutely not, or, okay, let's have a look at our finances, sit down with me and let's see if it's justifiable, you know.
And look, in nearly every single relationship, there's someone who does take the lead with the finances. That doesn't mean you're an abuser at all. And, you know, sometimes it's a husband who goes, oh, honey, just look after it for me. And sometimes the wife goes, oh, I couldn't give, you know, a rat's. You do it all. So it is very, very common in every relationship. It also doesn't mean that, you know, you don't have access to the bank account, or you know where the assets are, you know what's in his soup, you know what, you know, the life insurance is worth. So you still have joint goals. And look, in some relationships, it may be completely normal for the wife to go out and say, I bought an investment property today. And in others, that would be divorce material. So it completely depends on the relationship, on, you know, your level of income, what your separate goals are, what your joint goals are. So, you know, there's a really big area of grey, because that's how relationships work. So, but, you know, it's when you read all the signs and, you know, is your partner completely in the dark about what's going on? And some people don't even realise they're being financially abused. You know, there might be always cash available for them to do the groceries or get a new dress or buy a lippy. But again, maybe they don't know that they've got 3 investment properties, that there's separate trusts, that, you know, in some cases there's a separate partner. You know, so those situations, they're like, you know, I always had enough, but you actually are still completely in the dark and wouldn't even know which bank you were with if something happened to your partner. And that's a really great litmus test. You know, if my partner died tomorrow, do I know where everything is?
I've been down that road as an advisor, where there are older clients and they're at sort of retirement stage, and the wife never came to the meetings, and I'd often say, come on, we've got to do this together. And then I did that thing where I just sort of gave her a call and just said, hey, how you going? Look, I just wanted to see if you got, because I'm doing an after hours appointment, I can pop over to the house. So this way I've got you both. You know, a bit cheeky of me, I know. But
sometimes you have to be.
And, you know, she was on the phone. She goes, you know what, Amy, I'm so glad you said this, because I go walking with the ladies every week and they know everything about what's going on with their retirement plan and their savings, and if their husbands were to die, what was going, you know, what would be left to them and da da da. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I don't even know if we have any money. And, you know, it wasn't like her husband was actually deliberately doing this.
She completely delegated the responsibility.
It was also generational. It's like my mum and my stepdad. It's just how that generation has been, is that there was someone who looked after the money and she looked after the household.
Yep.
And that's how it was. And so, but she's now getting to a point at retirement, and all of a sudden her friends is talking about their relationship with their financial advisor. And she always says hi to me and knows that I'm around, and I always send them both information. But this time we sat down and I had her husband basically write down every single asset, every value, every liability they had. And then I turned to her and I said in front of him, see, just so she understood. And he sort of got that understanding that, oh, she's been nervous? Why? But, you know, he had absolutely no idea. And this was a few years back. But it was a great exercise for them both, I think. I don't think that there was ever, it was just unspoken.
Yep.
You know, but that I don't see, and this is where we've got to be careful of labelling as well. I didn't see that as a deliberate sort of point of control or abuse. I think that was more cultural and a generation thing as well. And if we can deal with it very subtly and get them involved.
Well, he wasn't hiding. There was no...
No, he wasn't hiding
at all. And she probably actually personally delegated responsibility going, oh, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
Which means you can be a prime suspect. Doesn't mean your partner's going to rip you off. But
no, yeah,
it can leave you open to that.
Yeah. But if I turned up to that, meeting and he
said, I'm not writing all that down.
I'm not writing that down, or I haven't got time for that now, or excuses. Yeah. Then I guess that's where you get the warning signs and going, okay, something's not right here.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, some cases, it may just be a miscommunication. Oh, I didn't realise, or we didn't speak about it, or I forgot, or, it can be quite, like you said, especially generational. It was always dad was the breadwinner. I was raised by, a Stepford wife. Mum would stay home with the kids. She'd work part-time when we went to school. Dad was the breadwinner. That is still quite common in not only Australia, but many places. Yeah. So, having, even culturally, including the women in some areas is just, absolutely taboo. It's like, you don't make the money, you don't get a say. So there's also cultural norms, especially, Australia's a great big melting pot. If you're not Indigenous, you're pretty much a boat person. You've come in somehow. So we've got this huge, melting pot of cultures, and, maybe we don't understand how it works in, Indian communities or Hindu communities or Muslim communities or Nigerian, whatever the, race, background, religious, there's so many different laws and things that make up this amazing country that we've got. And, sometimes we might then have to go and get an expert in that area and go, look, is this normal? Is this how it is in that culture? How can we, move on from that and create these respectful relationships? Or, if that person's completely okay with it, then that's okay too. But we have to be so aware of the nuances.
Yes, and that's where this course is going to be teaching us what to be aware of, what signs to look for, and I guess then as you put it in your toolkit, how to deal with them as they come along. I mean, there'll be no one fix for all. And then I guess it's about networking, getting the right professionals in line to assist that client who is going through that situation. And I guess not to forget the abuser as well, because that's important that they also get the help, because they might not even realise how bad they're behaving.
Yeah. And look, in some cases, nothing you do is going to help. In other cases, like you said, they might go, oh, geez, had no clue that wasn't acceptable behaviour. And marriages can actually, I suppose, be saved over the open lines of communication. I know Dominique, in her interview in the course, gave an example of a husband and wife who he just had no idea that she wanted to know all that information, and she felt completely in the dark and misled about everything. And he's like, I didn't even know it was an issue. I didn't even understand that that's what she wanted. So, sometimes we're the worst. We sabotage ourselves. We get all worked up and actually don't speak or say things, or we say things in anger rather than having a standard discussion. So, maybe even having a psychologist in the toolkit, the family lawyer, a local shelter, counsellors who can help. This toolkit isn't just I need to help this one person now. I've got the abuser, hotline on the phone. That's it. It's so complex, and every case you come across is going to be different. So
yeah, I bet. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to doing this course, and we are going to be doing a webinar with you in October through the AFA Inspire community, which is really exciting. And I'll have done the course by then. So we'll be talking more details on the actual content, because in that we're going to really encourage with our colleagues and other professionals to get involved and get on board and get accredited, because I'm a big believer in what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. Well done you, because it's amazing. As soon as Michelle told me, I was like, I've got to get on board with this. This is amazing. Just because I've recognised it, and I've had absolutely besides the stuff that I've done and courses I've done for myself, I've had no other tools, and I've been lucky to sort of recognise someone's self-esteem and things that also have been through a divorce. I have walked in some of those shoes, not all of them, but I've come through quite unscathed in respect to the abuse side of things. But there are things out of relationships you do come away from and go, well, that's affected me psychologically. I'm bruised somewhere along the way from this. There is, we're all damaged in some way. I like to say bruised, because we heal. We're not broken. Yeah, we're not broken. That I don't like using the word broken, because we heal. And this is another, great opportunity of helping others heal and, go from strength to strength and, rebuild their lives. So thank you so much, Amanda, for a wonderful hour. Oh, you're welcome. I'm really looking forward to getting this out, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
No problem.